Using a calculator or otherwise, evaluate each of the following, giving your answers in exact form. So here we have 3 over 2 all squared minus 1 plus 6. Right? So we can enter this directly in our calculators because it's just 1 mark and it's for the answer. So we can say, so it's 3 divided by 2 all squared minus 1 plus 6. And that gives us 29 over 4. Or, if you want, you could put 7.25. Alright, so let's look at the next one. Here it says 2.1 times 10 over 7, all bracket, plus 12 divided by 1 3/5. So therefore, let's look how many marks this question is worth. So 1 mark for answer and 1 mark to show working. So this is going to be 2.1 times 10, so that is 21 over 7. And then we have plus 12 divided by 1 3/5, so that is going to give us divided by 8 over 5. Now, we can go ahead and change the division to multiplication, but we have to take the reciprocal. So this is going to be 21 over 7 plus 12 times 5 over 8. Now 12 times 5, that's going to give us 60. So we're going to have 21 over 7 plus 60 over 8. So now if we go ahead and put this in our calculator, we can read off the answer. So this is 21 over 7 plus 60 over 8. And that's going to give us 21 over 2. So that's equal to 21 over 2. So that's our answer in exact form. Miranda earns $8,316 per month. She spends 4 over 7 of her earnings on utility bills, food, and personal items, and save the remainder. So you say, what percentage of her monthly salary does she save? Right? So we need to find out the amount of her salary she saves. So if Miranda already spent 4 over 7 of her earnings on utility bills, food, and personal items, then she's going to be left with 3 over 7 of her earnings for savings. And this is already in a ratio, so all we have to do is to multiply this by 100 to get the percentage. So if we take 3 divided by 7 times 100, we're going to get 42.86% of her salary. So that's 1 mark. Now it says part 2, the portion of her earnings spent on utility bills, food, and personal items is divided in the ratio 5:3:4 respectively. Calculate the amount of money she spends on personal items. Let us first calculate the amount of money she spends on utility bills, food, and personal items. So the question already told us up here that is 4 over 7 of her earnings. So it's going to be 4 over 7 times, and let us look back at her monthly earnings. So it is 8,316. Right, so if we enter this in our calculator, we get the total amount. So it is 4 over 7 times 8,316, and we get 4,752. Right, so now we need to calculate the amount of money she spends on personal items. Now personal items is 3 right there, so it is going to be 3 over the total ratio. So 5 plus 3 is 8, 8 plus 4 is 12. Right, so it is going to be 3 over 12 times 4,752, and then we enter that in our calculator, and that gives us 1,188. So let's write personal items right here. Right. Right, so let's move on to the next question. So here it says, Miranda saves the same amount of money each month. Show that her annual savings from her earnings is $42,768. Alright, so we know what portion of her earnings she saves. So it is going to be 3 over 7 times, and her monthly earnings. Her monthly earning is 8,316. So if we put that in our calculator, and that is going to give us 3,564. So to find the annual, so this is monthly. So to find the annual, it's going to be 3,564 times 12. So if we times this by 12, so times answer by 12, we get the $42,768. Right? Let's move on to part 4 of the question. She invests the $42,768 in her credit union, which pays compound interest of 5% per annum. What is the total interest earned after 2 years? So the examiner gave us the compound interest formula. We know that P is 42,768. R, so P, here is P. R is 5%, so this is R, 5%. And N is 2 years. So we're going to enter this in our formula. So this is A after 2 years. So let's put 2 years. That's equal to 42,768. And then open bracket, 1 plus 5 over 100 raised to the power of 2. Now this is going to give us, let's work this out in our calculator. So 42,768, open bracket, 1 plus 0.05. Remember 5 over 100 is 0.05 raised to the power of 2. So I can just square that. And that is going to give me 47,151.72. Now, this is the final amount after 2 years, the $47,151.72. So that is the final amount. But the question asks us for the total interest earned after 2 years. So therefore, what we have to do to find the total interest, so interest, we have to subtract the original amount, P, from the final amount. So it is going to be 47,151.72 minus the 42,768. And that is going to give us a total interest. So let us subtract that. So minus 42,768. And that is going to give us $4,383.72. So that is the total interest she received after 2 years, or earned after 2 years, right? So be careful with this question. If they ask you for the ending balance, right, we just use the formula here. However, if they ask you for interest earned, we must subtract the original amount from the ending balance. Calculate the value of the square root of 7.1 square plus 2.9 square, giving your answer correct to A, two significant figures. So what we're going to do, we're going to enter this directly in our calculator. So 7.1 square plus 2.9 square. So we're going to round it off to two significant figures. So this is going to be 7.7. That's the two significant figures. Now, what about to two decimal places? To two decimal places, we're going to have 7.67. Two decimal places. Now, part 2, it says write the following quantities in ascending order. Right? Now the 47%, I can write it as 0.47, and I have the 0.46. So I just need to confirm the 12 over 25, so I can enter that in my calculator. And this is going to give me 0.48. So in ascending order, it's going to be 0.46, and then 47%, and then 12 over 25. Right? Now let's look at the next one. So here it says Mahendra and Jaya shared $7,224 in the ratio 7 to 5. So how much more money does Mahendra receive than Jaya? Right? So what we're going to do, we're going to subtract 5 from 7. So 7 minus 5, that is going to give us 2. And then we're going to take the total ratio, 7 plus 5, that's equal to 12. Then in order to find out how much more money Mahendra received than Jaya, we're going to say 2 divided by 12 times 7,224. And that's going to give us 1,204. The next way we could do this, which would involve more working, is to find out how much Mahendra receive and how much Jaya receive, and then take the difference. Part C now, it says the present population of Portsmouth is 550,000. It is expected that the population will increase by 42% by the year 2030. Part 1, write the number in standard form. So in standard form, all we're going to do, we're going to imagine a decimal here, and we're going to move to our left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's going to be 5.5 times 10 to the 5. Right? Now part 2, it says calculate the expected population of Portsmouth in 2030. Now, in order to find the expected population in 2030, the question states that it will increase by 42%. So we're going to take 42% of 550,000. So 0.42, that's 42%, off the 550,000. And that is going to give us 231,000. And then we're going to add this. We're going to add this to the original population size. So it is going to be 550,000 plus 231,000. And that is going to be 781,000. So the expected population of Portsmouth in 2030 is going to be 781,000. Right, so let's look at the next part. Now here the CSEC examiner is giving us exchange rate. However, we're seeing a graph here. Now it said the graph below can be used to convert between US dollars and Eastern Caribbean dollars. Now we have US dollar is on the y-axis and Eastern Caribbean dollar is on the x-axis. Now it says using the graph, convert US $2 to EC dollars. So all we're going to do, we're going to look for US $2 on our y-axis. Here it is. So we're going to move across, and when we touch the line, we're going to move downwards. So right here. So this is going to be about 5.3. Remember, each one of the small squares is 0.2, right? So we have 5.2, then right in between 5.2 and 5.4, we have 5.3. So this is 5.3 EC dollars, right? Now, let's look at the next one. It says convert EC $70 to US dollars. Now, let us go up to our graph. Now, on this, we are not seeing $70. But what we can do, we can look for $7 first. Let's look for $7. So $7 EC dollars right here. So we're going up. Use a different color. So $7, we're going up. And then once we touch the line, we move across. And right here. So here is about 2.6. So we have 2.2, 2.4, 2.6. Right? So we know that EC $7 is equal to US $2.6. Right? So therefore, in order to find out what 70 EC dollars is, in US, we're going to multiply both sides by 10. So therefore, we have EC $70 is equal to US $26. Right? We just multiply both sides by 10. Express as a single fraction in its simplest form. Right. So we have 1 minus bracket 1 over 30 plus 4 over 15 close bracket. We can go ahead and put this directly in our calculators. So this is 1 minus open bracket 1 divided by 30 plus 4 divided by 15 close brackets. That gives us 7 over 10. Now the question is worth 2 marks, so just putting down 7 over 10 will not give us the full 2 marks. So that means we need to simplify the expression in the brackets. So if I enter in my calculator again, so let's clear this. 1 over 30 plus 4 over, this is 4 over 15, that gives me 3 over 10. So I'm going to write 1 minus 3 over 10, right? And that's equal to 10 over 10 minus 3 over 10, and that's equal to 7 over 10. So that's our answer right there for the 2 marks. So some of the times we need to look at the marks allocated for the questions, and then we can determine whether we should just directly put an answer or show working. Let's move to the next question. A 2-story car park has a total of 1,020 parking spaces. At 0630 hours one morning, 1 over 30 of the 1,020 spaces are filled. During the next hour, no cars left the car park, but another 4 over 15 of the 1,020 spaces are filled. Determine the number of parking spaces that are not filled at 0730 hours. Now, a bit lengthy, however, it's 1 mark, so it's nothing hard. So we need to determine the number of spaces that are not filled at 0:30 hours. Now, at 0630 hours, we know that 1 over 30 of the 1,020 spaces are filled. If I enter in my calculator, let's clear this. 1 over 30 times 1020, that's equal to 34. And during the next hour, no cars left. The car park, but another 4 over 15 of the 1020. So this is 4 over 15 of the 1020 are filled. So again, put in my calculator, 4 over 15 times 1020, that's equal to 272. Now I have the total spaces that are filled, so all I need to do is to subtract this from the 1020. So I'm going to have 1020 minus 34 minus 272, and if I enter this in my calculator, 1020 minus 34 minus 272, that's equal to 714. So 714 parking spaces are not filled at 7:30 hours. Next question. Of the 1020 parking spaces, 20% are on the top level. How many parking spaces are on the top level? So this is relatively easy. So we're going to say 20 over 100 times 1020. So 0 cancels 0, 0 cancels 0. So we are left with 2 times 102. So that gives us 204. Of course, we could put in our calculators 20 over 100 times 1020, and that gives us 204. Alright, let's move on. Now here it's saying some of the spaces are reserved for monthly paying customers. The ratio of reserved spaces to non-reserved spaces is 5 to 7. Calculate the number of non-reserved parking spaces. Right, we know that reserve to non-reserve is 5 to 7. So the total ratio, or the total parts, we need to find 5 plus 7, that's equal to 12. So what is the ratio for non-reserve? The ratio for non-reserve is 7. That is what they want us to find. So we're going to take 7 and divide by 12, and then multiply this by the total parking spaces, and that should give me, if I enter in my calculator, 7 over 12 times 1020, that gives us 595. Right, so that's the total number of non-reserved parking spaces. Let's move to the next question. Now, the cost for parking at a car park is shown in the table below. So we have the length of the visit and the cost. So under 30 minutes is free, more than 30 minutes and up to 2 hours is $2.25. More than 2 hours and up to 4 hours is $5.50. More than 4 hours and up to 8 hours is $9.25. More than 8 hours and up to 24 hours is $15. And 1 week ticket is $40. So let's look at what the question is asking. So Michaela leaves the car park at 18:30 hours and pays $9.25. Determine the earliest time she could have arrived at the car park. Right. So we know that Michaela leaves the car park at 18:30 hours, right? Now she pays $9.25, right? So that means she is in this category. Now in this category, what is the maximum amount of hours she can spend in this category? Because we know that she pays $9.25. So it is 8 hours. So in this category, right, the maximum hours she can spend in this category is 8 hours. So we subtract the 8 hours from the 18:30, and that gives us 10:30. Right? So 10:30 hours. So that's the earliest time she could arrive at the car park. We couldn't subtract the 4 because if we subtract the 4, we wouldn't get the earliest time. We have to use the maximum hours in this category. Right? So the answer is 10:30 hours. So let's look at the next part. So Dan Raj bought a weekly ticket for $40. That week he visited the car park 5 times, 5 different times. The length of time he parked his car on each occasion is given below. So we have 25 minutes, 7.5 hours, 11 hours, 8.75 hours, and 8 hours. Show that Danraj saved $8.50 by buying the weekly ticket. So we know that the weekly ticket is $40. So the week ticket is $40, right? Now we need to work out the cost for each of these times. So under 30 minutes, so we here is 25 minutes. So we know that under 30 minutes is free. 7.5 hours. 7.5 hours would be in this category. So he would pay $9.25. What about 11 hours? So for 11 hours, he would be in this category right here. So it's 15 hours. So it's $15. 8.75 hours would be in the same category as 11 hours. So he would pay $15. 8 hours. So in 8 hours, if he spent 8 hours, he would pay $9.25. So if we add all of these costs together, let's use our calculator. So 0 plus 9.25 plus 15 plus 15 again plus 9.25, that gives us 48.5, right? And then we would subtract the 40 from this. So we know that the total amount paid is equal to $48.5. So he paid $40, it's $40 he paid for this ticket. However, if he never paid for this ticket, it would have cost him $48. So the difference now, 48.5 minus 40, and that gives us $8.5. So by buying this weekly ticket, he saves $8.5. So that is what the question is asking us. A relatively simple question. So if we scroll down, we see 3 marks. So all we had to do was to just find the total cost of each of these times, right? And then we subtract it from the $40 he paid for the weekly ticket. So let's look at the next question. Again, we are looking at only question 1s, so you get a good understanding of how to tackle these questions. Of course, question 1s tend to be relatively easier. Find the exact value of 5/6 plus 2/3 minus 12 over 35 times 7 over 9. Now the question is worth 2 marks, so we cannot just put this in our calculators and write down the answer. We would only get 1 mark. We need to do some simplifying. So the first thing we need to do, so let's put this in our calculators. So we can simplify 5 over 6, right, plus 2 over 3, right, and that gives me 3 over 2, right, and then this is minus 12 over 35 times 7 over 9. Now we can also simplify this bit, so let's put in our calculators. 12 over 35 times 7 over 9. That gives me 4 over 15. So this is 3 over 2 minus 4 over 15. Now if I enter this directly in my calculators now, 3 over 2 minus 4 over 15, that's going to give me 37 over 30, and I can write this as a mixed fraction, and that gives me 1 and 7 over 30. So there we have our answers. So again, we need to identify how many marks the question is worth, and then we need to show some working. Let's look at the next question. Calculate the value of the square root of 1 minus cos 37 degrees squared, correct the 3 decimal places. 2 marks. Now, we need to enter in our calculators what is 1 minus cos 37 degrees all square. Right? So let's look at our calculator. Again, we need to ensure that our calculator is set to degrees. So let us now enter this in our calculator. 1 minus, open bracket, cosine of 37 degrees, right, and then this is squared, right, equal. So that gives me, that is going to give me 0.36218. So let's leave it to 5 decimal places, and then we're going to take the square root. So let's take the square root of this. So the square root of 0.36218, that's going to give me 0.60181. Now the question is saying rounded to 3 decimal places, so I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, and this is going to be 0.602. So that's my final answer. Again, please ensure that your calculator is in degrees, or your answer will not be correct. Write 0.0527 in standard form. Right? This is not a calculator question. We need to write 0.00527 in standard form. Now, the first thing we need to do is to move the decimal point between the first 2 natural numbers or counting numbers, right? And which direction we need to move? To our right. So we are going to move 1, 2, 3. So the decimal point will fall right between 5 and 2. So this is going to become 5.27, right, times 10 to the minus 3. Once we move to our right, it's a minus, and if we had moved to our left, it would be a plus. But in this case, we move to our right 3 places, so it's minus 3. So in standard form, 0.00527 is 5.27 times 10 to the minus 3. Let's look at the next question. Harish works at a call center for 35 hours each week. He is paid an hourly rate of $11.20. Calculate the amount of money Harish earns in a 4-week month. So let us find out how much money Harish works in 1 week first. So in 1 week, right, Harish works 35 hours times 11.20. So enter this in our calculators. 35 times 11.20, and that gives us 392. Right, so that's what he works in 1 week. So in 4 weeks, in 4 weeks, he'd have worked 392 times 4. So we times that by 4. That gives us $1,568. That's what he'd have earned in 4 weeks. So let's look at the next question. In a certain week, Harish works 8 hours overtime. Overtime hours are paid at $1.50 or 1.5 times the usual rate, right, of $11.20 per hour. Find the total amount of money Harish is paid for that week. So we need to find the overtime rate. So the overtime rate is equal to 1.5 times $11.20. So let's put this in our calculator. $1.50 times 11.20. That's equal to 16.8, right, dollars. So the overtime rate is $16.8, right? Now, if he works 8 hours overtime a particular week, so we're gonna say overtime earnings is equal to 8 times 16.8. That's equal to, so let us do this now, 16.8 times 8. That gives me 134.4. Right? Now, this is only the overtime he earned in that week. The question is asking us for the total. So remember up here we had calculated the amount he'd have worked in 1 week. So we need to add this to the overtime earnings. So the total amount equals the 392 plus the 134.4, and that gives us, so we enter in our calculator, 392 plus 134.4, that gives us 526.4. So in that week, if he worked 8 hours overtime, he would have earned $526.04, right? Move to the next question. So here it says, by rounding each number in the expression below to one significant figure, estimate the value of the square root of 108, all divided by 19.72 plus 5.296. Now, the question is saying we need to round each of the numbers to one significant figure, right? And then estimate the value. The question never said we should calculate each figure and then round to one significant figure, right? I know some persons might misinterpret the question and do it that way. However, we need to round, just look and round to one significant figure first. So what is 108 to one significant figure? So this is going to be equal to 100, because 108 to one significant figure is just 100, divided by what is 19.27 to one significant figure, right? That is 20. And what is 5.296 to one significant figure? That is 5. So we are left with the square root of 100 divided by 20 plus 5. This is going to give us, what is the square root of 100? That is 10. And 20 plus 5 is 25. So I'm left with 10 over 25. Can we simplify? Of course we can simplify. Would we have lost marks? No, because the question didn't say simplify. However, let's simplify. So we can say 5 into 10 goes 2 times. 5 into 25 goes 5 times. So our answer is 2 over 5. So find the exact value of 3 3/8 divided by 5 over 12 plus 1 over 3. Give your answer as a mixed number in its simplest form. So we see a bracket here. So we can work out what this bracket gives us. So this is going to be, so let us enter in our calculator first. 5 over 12 plus 1 over 3. That gives us 3 over 4. So this becomes 3 3/8 divided by 3 over 4. Right? Now we need to convert this mixed fraction here into an improper fraction. So how do we do this? We multiply 3 times 8. That gives us 24. 24 plus 3, 27. So this becomes 27 over 8 divided by 3 over 4. Now remember that when we are dividing by a fraction, it's the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So this becomes 27 over 8 times 4 over 3. Again, we can go ahead and put this directly in our calculators, or we can just simplify, right? But let's put it in our calculators just to work quickly. So this is 27 over 8 times 4 over 3. That gives me 9 over 2. And I can convert this to a mixed fraction. That gives me 2 into 9 goes 4 times. And 1 remainder, so I'm left with 1 over 2. So that's my answer right there. 4 and 1 over 2. Again, guys, you see how I just work this question with the use of my calculator to get my 3 marks. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the number of available seats in an hall was reduced from 125 to 93. Calculate the percentage decrease in the number of available seats. Now, there is a handy formula we can use when calculating percentage decrease or increase, and this is new minus old over old times 100, right? Now, in this case, the new number of seats is 93 and the old number of seats is 125, and we divide by 125 times 100. So if we go ahead and put this in our calculators, we get 93 minus 125. That is going to give me negative 32 upon 125 times 100. So let's work this out now. Negative 32 divided by 125 equal times 100, and that gives me negative 25.6%. The negative simply means there is a decrease. So we're going to state our answer 25.6% decrease. Let's look at the next question. Micah invests a certain amount of money in a bank that pays compound interest at a rate of 2.5% per annum. At the end of 2 years, the value of her investment is $7,564.50. Right? Calculate the amount Micah invests. Right? So the examiner is lenient enough to give us the formula for compound interest. It's A is equal to P 1 plus R over 100 over N. Now A, that is the total amount of money after N years. So the question states to us that after 2 years, the value of our money is $7,564.50. So in this case, A is $7,564.50. Right? So that's what A is. The question never told us what the amount of money she invested. So we don't know P. We put back our 1 right here. So what is R? R is 2.5%, or in this case, it is 2.5. So it is 2.5 over 100. And how many years she invested the money? 2 years. So this is just a simple equation where we need to solve for P. Right? So let's turn my calculator, and I'm going to say, so before we enter anything in our calculators, I'm going to say $7,564.50 is equal to P times, and now I'm going to enter this in my calculator, bracket 1 plus 2.5 divided by 100 squared. And this gives me 1.050625. So I have an equation here with one unknown, and that is P. So in order to find P, we need to divide both sides by 1.050625. So P is equal to $7,564.50 divided by 1.050625. And so let me enter that in my calculator. 7,564.50 divided by 1.050625. And that gives me 7,200. So the original investment P is 7,200. So after 2 years, this money grows, of course, compound interest to $7,564.50. So again, the examiner was lenient enough to give us the formula. All we had to do was to substitute the information that is given. So we were given 2 years, which is N, and we were given the rate, which is R, and we were given the initial, the investment or the amount after 2 years, and that is A. Nothing hard here. Of course, we are getting the practice, so if we see a next question like this, we know what to do. Let's move to the next question. Again, these are fractions questions, so let's clear my calculator. Now, using a calculator, otherwise, find the exact value of 7 over 8 plus 1 over 6 divided by 2 over 9. The question is worth 1 mark. So, all the examiner is looking for here is just the answer. However, they want the exact value. So, we can go ahead and substitute or put these fractions in our calculator. So, it's 7 over 8 plus 1 over 6 divided by 2 over 9. And that gives me 13 over 8, which is the same thing in as a mixed fraction as 1 and 5 over 8. Let's look at the next question. Again, this is 1 mark, so we can put this directly in our calculator. Let's clear. So that's 8 divided by 0.4 raised to the power 3. So this is 8 divided by 0.4 raised to the power 3, and that's equal to 125. Again, these are questions that are testing you if you can use a calculator properly. So please ensure that we have a calculator which we are comfortable using. Next question. We are finding the value of the square root of 26.8 minus 2.5 raised to the power of 3 over 2, correct to 2 decimal places. So let's clear our calculator again. The square root of 26.8 minus 2.5 to the power of, now some of us, we have to be careful when we're entering this power, 3 over 2. However, 3 over 2 is the same thing as 1.5, so I'm going to use that instead. So 3 over 2 is the same thing as 1.5, so 1.5, right? And this gives me 1.22, right? Now, remember the questions tell us to state 2 decimal places, so we cannot put down 3 decimal places. So we could go ahead and put the rest of decimals to show the examiner that we had calculated the exact thing here. However, we can say now to 2 dp is 1.22. Of course, the extra word doesn't give us any extra mark. Alright, so that is how we do these questions. Again, let me stress the importance of using a calculator that you're comfortable using and that you get enough practice on the calculator. If you want to go ahead and get a calculator like mine, and so you can follow through with all the steps that I'm doing. So let's move to the next question. So in this question it says, children go to a rodeo camp during the Easter holiday. Miss Recca buys bananas and oranges for the children at the camp. Now, part 1 is saying now, bananas cost $3.85 per kilogram. Miss Recca buys 25 kilograms of bananas and receive a discount of 12%. How much money does she spend on bananas? Now, we need to work out the cost of the bananas, right? Of buying bananas. Now, we know that bananas is 3.85 per kilogram, right? And this is per kilogram. 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 and if she bought 25 kilograms of bananas, what's the cost? So the cost of bananas without the discount is equal to 3.85 times 25. So let's put this in our calculator. 3.85 times 25. So that gives me 96.25. Now this is the cost of bananas without the discount. So 96.25. Now we need to factor in the discount. And the easiest way to factor in the discount is saying we're going to say 96.25 times 1 minus 12 over 100, and that will give us the actual price. So this is clear, 96.25 times 1 minus 12 divided by 100, and that gives me $84.7. So Miss Reka would pay $84.7, right, for the bananas. That's $84.07. Again, there's a next way we could work it out. I know some persons might say 96.25 times 12 over 100, and that is going to give them, so let's put this in our calculator, 96.25 times 12 divided by 100, and that gives you 11.55. So that is a discount she received. And now what they will do now is to take 96.25 minus 11.55. So let's put this in our calculators. 96.25 minus 11.55, and that gives me 84.7, and that is the same answer we received. However, just a different way of working it. Let's move to the next question. So it says now Miss Reka spends $165.31 inclusive of sales tax of 15% on oranges. Calculate the original price of the orange, right? So this question is now saying we do not know the original price of the orange, but we know what she paid inclusive of tax, the 15% tax. So we're going to set up a simple equation here. So X represents the original price of the orange, right? Bracket 1 plus 15 over 100, and that is equal to $165.31. Now, bear in mind that the price, the 165, includes GCT. So that is why we have the addition here. Remember, if we go back to the discounted one, we have a subtraction here. So in this case, the GCT represents an extra cost. So we're going to pay more for the oranges. So we have to add. So now, go ahead and put this in our calculators. We don't really have to put it in our calculators, the bracket part. However, just for convenience, you're going to say 1 plus 15 divided by 100, and that gives me 1.15. It's equal to 165.31, right? So how do we find X? In order to find X, we divide both sides by 1.15. So X is equal to 165.31 divided by 1.15, and that gives me 165 divided by 3.1 divided by 1.15, and that gives me 143.75. So that's our answer. Let's put our dollars. So here's the next question now. The ratio of the number of bananas to the number of oranges is 2 to 3. Furthermore, there are 24 more oranges than bananas. Calculate the number of bananas Miss Rebecca bought. So we're given a ratio question. So let's see how we can work this out. So we have bananas to oranges, and they told us the ratio is 2 to 3, right? Furthermore, they told us that there are 24 more oranges than bananas. Now, I don't know how many bananas are there, so I'm going to say this is X. And also, there are 24 more oranges than bananas. So I'm going to say this is X plus 24. Now we can equate both of these things together. So if we say that the ratio 2 to 3 is equal to the ratio of X divided by X plus 24, so we can cross multiply. 3x is equal to 2 times x plus 24, right? All brackets. So we expand the brackets on the left, on the right I mean. So we get 3x is equal to 2x plus 48. If we subtract 2x from both sides of the equation, we get 3x minus 2x is equal to 48. 3x minus 2x is 1x, so we're going to say x is equal to 48. Remember we said that x is represent the number of bananas, so here we found what x is. So therefore we have 48 bananas. You can also check this to see if the ratio is actually the same. So for instance, what is 48 divided by 48 plus 24? Right? So this is going to give me 48 divided by 72. Enter this in our calculator. 48 over 72. 3 over 2. So this ratio is actually 2 over 3, sorry. So you can see that just by setting up a simple equation here, we can find out the number of bananas. I know some persons might have an easier way to do it, but this is the more structural way, right? So x is equal to 48. Let's move to the next question again. Notice how the fractions are coming up. So here it says using a calculator, otherwise find the exact value of 8.9 plus 31.6 divided by 0.75 times 5.4. Again, we can put this entire thing in our calculators. So the first thing we can do, we can add the numerator and find out what the value is, and then do the denominator and find out what the value is, and then you take the fraction. So the numerator is 8.9 plus 31.6. That gives us 40.5 divided by, so 0.75 times 5.4. That gives us 4.05. And if we enter this in our calculators now, we get 40.5 divided by 4.05, and that is equal to 10. Now, you might be wondering, how am I getting fractions sometimes? and then I convert it into decimal. For instance, so if I have 3 divided by 2, I'm going to get 3 over 2. So I just simply press the shift to decimal. So this is press that function, that key right here. I can press it back to get back the fraction. Press it to get the decimal. Press it to get again to get the fraction. Press it again to get the decimal. Right? So this calculator is a handy tool, and not all of the calculators have it. So let's move to the next question. So they're asking us to find the value of 3.9 times the tangent of 18 degrees correct to 1 decimal place. So we can go ahead and enter this directly in our calculators. So 3.9 times tan 18 degrees, and that gives me 1.26717. Just round that off. Though the question requires 1 decimal place, so I'm going to write 1.3. This is 1 decimal place right here, but the number that follows it is greater than 5, so we have to round up. Let's move to the next question to see what it's asking us to do. Right. So notice what is happening with question 1s. We are seeing that the first question is about fractions, use of calculators, and the second question, which is part B, is either asking us to find discount. We saw in the last question we found a discount. We saw in the other question we were asked to find overtime, right? Basic wage. Again, this question is about basic wage again. So let's see how we can tackle this one. So Rhea is paid the rate of $13.50 per hour. During a certain week, she works 40 hours. How much did she earn that week? So we are giving her hourly rate of $13.50, and we are told that she works 40 hours. So multiply that by 40, and that gives us, let's enter that in our calculator, 13.50 times 40. That gives us $540. So that's 1 mark. Now, the next part of the question is saying Rhea worked 4 weeks in the month of August, and her gross earnings was $2,463.75. Her regular week comprised of 40 hours, and overtime was paid $1.50 times the hourly rate. Show that Rhea worked 15 hours overtime in August. So how do we do this to show that she worked 15 hours overtime in August? Now, the first thing we need to ask ourselves is, without this overtime, how much money would she earn in 4 weeks? So in the previous question, we saw that she earned $540 in 1 week, right? In 1 week, she earned $540. So how much should she earn in 4 weeks? So without overtime, in 4 weeks, she would have earned 4 times 540. And that gives me, enter our calculator, 4 times 540. That gives me $2,160. Right? So that is what she would have earned without overtime. So let's find the total amount of money she earned overtime. So overtime earnings is equal to, it must be the difference. So 2,463.75 minus 2,160. And that gives me, so let's put in our calculators, 2,463.75 minus 2,160. That's equal to, let's convert that to 303.75. So this is the earnings, overtime earnings. So now remember that overtime earnings is equal to the overtime rate. So overtime earnings is equal to the overtime rate times the hours. So we need to show that she worked 15 hours of overtime. So let's find the overtime rate. They are saying that the overtime rate is $1.50 of what her usual rate is. So what is her usual rate? Let's go back to the top part of the question. Her usual rate is $13.50. So the overtime rate is going to be 1.5 times 13.5. So that is equal to 20.25. So our overtime rate is $20.25. So if our overtime rate is $20.25 and she earned $303.75 for overtime, let's find the hours. So the hours now is equal to 303.75 divided by 20.25. Let's see what our calculator gives us. 303.75 divided by 20.25. 15. So we have structured the solution in such a way that it forces us to easily find the overtime hours. So the first step we did, we find out how much she earned without overtime, and then we find the overtime earnings. Once we know the overtime earnings, we can easily calculate the hours. And once we found the overtime earnings, we just divide it by the overtime rate. Remember, the amount of money you make is always the rate times the hours. So if we found the overtime earnings, right, which is the amount of overtime money she made, all we have to do is to divide that by the hourly rate for overtime. And we have done this, and you'll see how we got back the 15 hours that the question requires, or the examiner requires to show. Let's move to the next question. So this is the next part of the question. I mean, it's not done as yet. So in August, 20% of her gross earning was deducted as tax. How much money does she have left after the deduction? So let's go back to how much money she made in August. So she made $2,463.75. So let's go over to here. So in August, she made $2,463.75. So $2,463.75. Now, if 20% is deducted as tax, then all we have to do, we can find 20% of this. So 20% of this is, multiply that by 20 over 100. So let's say, put this in our calculators, 2,463.75 times 20 divided by 100. Change that to decimal. So that is 492.75. So $492.75 is deducted from her pay. So her what she has left after the tax is going to be $2,463.75 minus $492.75, and that's going to equal to, let's put this in our calculators, 2,463.75 minus 492.75. That's going to give me $1,971. So after the 20% deduction, she is taking home $1,971. Let's move to the next question. Rhea invested $219 of her earnings for 3 years at a rate of 4.5% per annum simple interest. How much interest does she receive after 3 years? So here we are talking about simple interest. So the formula for finding simple interest is P R T, where P is the principal amount you invest, R is the rate, and T is the time, which in years. So in this case, we have $219 invested, and the rate is 4.5. So I'm going to say 4.5 over 100 times how many years? 3 years. Notice the question is asking for the interest. So if I enter this in my calculator, 219 times 4.5 divided by 100 times 3. Change that to decimal, gives me $29.565. So she earned $29.565 in interest. So in this question it says, using a calculator or otherwise, calculate the exact value of 1 and 4 over 7 divided by 2 over 3 minus 1 and 5 over 7. So the first step, let's convert the mixed fractions into improper fraction. So 1 times 7 is 7, plus 4, that is 11 over 7 divided by 2 over 3 minus, and this is going to be 1 times 7, 7 plus 5, 12 over 7. Right? We need to recognize that there is a division in this expression. So we cannot subtract 12 over 7 from 2 over 3, because we have to divide before we subtract. Remember BOMDAS? We work out bracket first. So the B is bracket. The O is order. And when we're talking order here, we're talking exponential. The M is multiplication. The D is divide. And the A is addition. And S is subtraction. So that means in this expression here, we cannot subtract before we divide. So again, remember, when we are dividing by a fraction, it's the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So this is going to be 11 over 7 times 3 over 2 minus 12 over 7. So now we can go ahead and put in our calculator the multiplication part, because we have to multiply before we subtract. So this is going to be 11 over 7 times 3 over 2 and that is going to give us 33 over 14 minus 12 over 7. And then what we need to do now, we need to subtract 12 over 7 from this. So we have 33 over 7 over 14 minus 12 over 7, and that is going to give us 9 over 14. So let's look at the next question. So it says, when Megan started working, she was paid $85 each week. After a 6-month probationary period, her pay was increased by 20%. How much was she paid each week after the increase? Alright, so we know that when she started working, she was getting $85. So the increase now, we're going to multiply this by 20 over 100, that's 20%, right? So go ahead and put in our calculators. 85 times 20 divided by 100, that's going to give me 17. That's the increase. Now, so the next step is to add this 17 to the $85. So 85 plus $17, and that's going to give me $102. So after the increase, her salary is now $102. Right? Let's look at the next question. In 1965, the population of a country A was 2,714,000. In 2015, the population was 3,663,900. Write the population in 2015 correct to 3 significant figures. So let us go to 2015. So to 3 significant figures, we're going to count off 1, 2, 3. Right? Notice the number that follows 6 is less than 5, which is 3. So we're going to write to 3 significant figures, 3, 6, 6. Then put a 0 right there, 0. Right? So that is the population in 2015 to 3 significant figures. That is 3,660,000. So 3,660,000. So write the population in 1965 in standard form. So the population in 1965 is 2,714,000. Right? Right. So we can imagine a decimal point right here. Right? Imagine a decimal point right here. And then we're going to move the decimal point between the first 2 numbers. So we're going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Decimal point drops right there. So we're going to have 2.714 times 10 to the 6. Right? 10 to the 6 because we move the decimal point to our left 6 times. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that is an easy 1 mark. Determine the percentage increase in the population from 1965 to 2015. Right? So remember, in our previous question we did a percentage decrease. However, this is a percentage increase. So all we have to do now, remember our formula, is new minus old divided by old times 100. So we're gonna say what is the new population. So the new population is 3,663,900 minus the whole population, which is 2,714,000, divided by our population 2,714,000 times 100. Right? So let's put the numerator in our calculators first. So this is 3663,900 minus 2714000. That gives us 949,900 divided by 2714000 times 100. So let's divide 949,900 over 2714000 times 100, and that gives us a 35% increase. Right, so the percentage increase from 1965 to 2015 is 35%. Let's look at the next question. The ratio of teachers to male students to female students in a school is 3 to 17 to 18. If the total number of students in the school is 630, determine the number of teachers in the school. Alright? Let's read our question again. The ratio of teachers to male students to female students in a school is 3 to 17 to 18. If the total number of students in the school is 630, determine the number of teachers in the school. Right, so let's find our total ratio, total parts. So let t equal 3 plus 17 plus 18, and this is going to give me 38. 3 plus 17 is 20. 20 plus 18 is 38. Also, they tell us that the number of students in the school is 630. Right. So let us say S. Let us find the ratio, the total ratio for our students. So that's going to give us 17 plus 18, and that is equal to 35. Right. So that is the ratio for student, the total ratio. Now, the question told us that the total number of students in the school is 630. That means they are saying 35 over 38 times P is equal to 630. Now, P is the school population, including teachers. So what they are saying that the students, which is S, divided by the total ratio times the population is equal to 630. Right? So all we need to do is to find P, and then we can find the number of teachers in the school. So how do we go about finding P? Let's put in our calculators first. 35 over 38, what that gives us. Okay, it gives us some decimals, so we cannot use that directly. So P is equal to 630 times 38 over 35, and we can get what P is. So let's do this. 630 times 38 over 35. That gives us 684. So the total school population is 634. Right? So if the total population of the school is 684, and we know that the total number of students is 630. Then that means the number of teachers in the school, I'm going to call this teachers is equal to 684 minus 630. And that is going to give me 684 minus 630. That is going to give me 54. So the number of teachers in the school is 54. We could also work this out the next way. We could say what is the ratio of teachers? That is 3 over 38 times the population, 684, and that would give us, let's put this in our calculators, 3 over 38 times 684, and that gives us 54 as well. So again, the number of teachers in the school is 54. Let's look at the next question. Let's clear our calculators. So using a calculator otherwise, calculate the exact value of 1 and 4 over 7 plus 2 over 3 minus 1 and 5 over 6. Right. So let's convert the mixed fractions into improper fraction. So 1 times 7 is 7 plus 4, that is 11 over 7. Then we have plus 2 over 3 minus 1 times 6 is 6. 6 plus 5, that is 11 over 6. Right? So now we can go ahead and put this in our calculators. Well, it's 2 marks. So let's add 11 over 7 plus 2 over 3. So 11 over 7 plus 2 over 3. That is going to give us 47 over 21. Then minus 11 over 6. Right? So we're going to say 47 over 21 minus 11 over 6, and that is going to give us 17 over 42. Now let's move to the next question. Write the value of the cube root of 27 over 9 squared as a fraction in its lowest terms. Now this is where it's important to have a calculator which you understand. So the cube root of 27, we're going to write, let's clear our calculators. So the cube root of 27 is the same thing as saying 27 raised to the power of 1/3. Because some of you guys might be looking to see where you can find this symbol on the calculators. You cannot find it directly on the calculators like that. You have to understand that the cube root is the same thing as raising the number to the 1/3. So we can enter the 27 raised to the power of 1/3 in our calculators. If we do that, 27 raised to the power of 1 divided by 3, that is going to give us 3. 9 squared is 81. So our fraction now becomes 3 over 81, right? And if we simplify this, 3 into 3, 1. 3 into 81 goes 27 times. So our answer is 1 over 27. We could check this in our calculators if we are concerned. So this is 3 over 81, 1 over 27. So that is where we get the 2 marks from. We show our working. So this is our working out for the 1 mark, and then to simplify, we get the other mark. Let's look at the other question. getting some good use of our calculators now. So using a calculator otherwise, calculate the exact value of the following. 4 1/5 times 1/3 minus 1 1/4. So let's convert this into improper fraction. So 4 1/5 is the same thing as 4 5s 20, 21/5 times 1/3 minus 1 times 4 is 4 plus 1. That gives me 5/4. Now remember, bomb us again, we have to multiply before we subtract, divide. So we can subtract the 5/4 from the 1/3. Our answer will be incorrect. Now, so we get 3 into 3, 1. Use a different color. 3 into 3, 1. 3 into 21 goes 7 times. So we are left with 7/5 minus 5/4. So we can now go ahead and put this in our calculators. So 7/5 minus 5/4, and we are left with 3/20 for our answer. Alright, let's look at the next question. 4.1 minus 1.25 squared divided by 0.05. So it's worth 2 marks. So let's write 4.1 minus, let's write out 1.25 squared. 1.25 squared is equal to 1.5625 over 0.005. Now we're going to work out the numerator. So this is 4.1 minus 1.5625. And that is going to give us 2.5375 divided by 0.005. So let's divide. Divided by 0.005. And that is equal to 507.5. Right? Let's move to the next question. A stadium currently has seating capacity of 15,400 seats. Calculate the number of people in the stadium when 75% of the seats are occupied. Right? So if 75% of the seats are occupied, then in order to calculate the number of persons in the stadium, we just say 15,400 times 75 over 100, and that is equal to, so 15,400 times 75 over 100, so that's equal to 11,550. So if 75% of the seats are occupied, that means we have 11,550 people in the stadium. Now the next part of the question is saying the stadium is to be renovated with a new seating capacity of 20,790 seats. After the renovation, what will be the percentage increase in the number of seats? So we have a percentage increase here. We know our formula, and our formula is new minus old divided by old times 100. So the new seating capacity is 20,790. The old seating capacity 15,400 divided by all again, 15,400 times 100. So let us work out the numerator first. So that's 20,790 minus 15,400. That gives us 5,390 divided by 15,400. times 100. So let's enter this in our calculators. 5390 over 15,400 times 100. That gives us a 35% increase. In the other question, we also got a 35% increase. I wonder if this is a trend. Probably not. Let's look at the next question. So here it says a neon light flashes 5 times every 10 seconds. Show that the light flashes 43,200 times in one day. Now, let's read the question again. A neon light flashes 5 times every 10 seconds. Show that the light flashes 43,200 times in one day. Now, this is where we need to have some idea about minutes, seconds, and hours. So now in one day, we know that we have 24 hours in one day. 24 hours in one day. Right? Now, we also know that 60 minutes is equal to 1 hour. Right? So 60 minutes equal to 1 hour. So therefore, to convert this hours into minutes, we multiply 24 by 60, and this is going to give us, so 24 times 60, 1,440, right, minutes, right? So 1,440 minutes in one day. We also know that 60 seconds make 1 minute. So we're going to say 1,440 times 60 again. And that is going to give us, times this by 60. That is going to give us 86,400 seconds in a day. Now, we are told that the neon light flashes 5 times every 10 seconds. So we need to divide this 86,400 by 10, and that gives us 8,640. Right? Now, it flashes 5 times. Right? So therefore, we need to multiply 8,640 by 5. Let's see what we get. 8,640 times 5. That gives us 43,200. That's exactly what the question asks us to show. So here's a line of reasoning. So I read the question. A neon light flashes 5 times every 10 seconds. Right? So immediately I know that whatever I do, I need to work in seconds. Right? Show that the neon light flashes 43,200 times in one day. So therefore, I need to find out how many seconds are in a day. Right? We cannot use our phones in the exam. Cannot go on the internet to find out how many seconds are in a day. So we need to go back to the basics. So I know that in one day there are 24 hours, and I know that 60 minutes make 1 hour. So I multiply the 24 by 60. I have my calculator with me, so I can enter that in my calculator. Also, I know that 60 seconds equal 1 minute. So I multiply the 1,440 by 60. So I get 86,400 seconds are in a day. Then I read back the question. The neon light flashes 5 times every 10 seconds. So I divide these seconds by 10 to get how many times I can get 10 into the 86,400. And then I multiply by 5. So we don't need to panic in exam. We need to use some logic. Even if we don't get the answer, the examiner or who is marking your paper can look and see if you have good reasoning. because that is one of the areas they look for when they are grading you. Look for reasoning, computation, right? So let's not shy away from using our reasoning ability in exam. All right, so let's recap as we come to a closure of this part of the video. For question 1 in section 1, we know that we're definitely going to get some form of fraction to simplify or to find the exact value. We know that we're going to get discount, we're going to get percentage increase or increase, right? We can get basic consumer arithmetic to calculate overtime, to calculate gross pay, to find the hourly rate, those stuff. So practice along those areas. We have looked at several questions with these topics. You can rewind the video and go back and see if you can work out these questions before you see the solution, or you can download the PDF file with these questions, work them out on your own, and then you can look at also the solution sheet and compare your answers. We need to be working on these questions. It shows a clear trend that you may get back some of these questions. So practice these questions. Be comfortable in your exam. In the next video, we'll look at all the question tools to get you all comfortable as well.